Amen. Amen. Thank you, Brother Willie.
Right, we want to welcome everyone in tonight. So glad you've taken the time and the effort to be here. I want to welcome those that are joining us live stream, and it's good to have those that are doing that as well this evening. And just by way of some announcements I need to run through, we need to remind you of Sunday night is our bowling night, so be sure to sign up for that. There are the sign-up sheets in the back, and that way we can get get that information to the bowling alley on how many are coming. And so if you didn't sign up Sunday or plan on coming to bowl, make sure you sign up for that. You're welcome to come if you don't bowl, if you just want to come and watch everybody else have a rough time at it, or make fun of some people, or whatever you want to do, okay? So you're welcome to come and enjoy the time together. $10 a person, and that does include your shoes. A lot better deal with this bowling alley than the one that we did last time. So make sure you make a note of that. And then also we have our Fall Festival flyers in the back, so please begin to take some of those, take some of the little business cards. That also has the information on them to invite people to come to our Fall Festival. Then also, if you can help in any way, we have a sheet back there that you can sign up for the different areas that we have with that. So be sure to make yourself available to that and get your name on that. That way we can be able to have everything ready to go for it. Also, don't forget our Celebration Sunday, which is October the 8th. That'll be the second Sunday in October, and that'll be 59 years that we've been here proclaiming the gospel. So we want to celebrate that and have a meal afterwards that day right here on the grounds. And so make a note of that. Begin to invite some people to come along with you, and another great opportunity to reach out during that. And then want to make sure you have the date for our annual business meeting. That's going to be October the 18th. That is a Wednesday night, so be sure to try to make it for that one. And then October 15th, Sunday evening, October 15th, will be our next new members class. So if you are looking at becoming a member, know someone that wants to be a member, make sure you get them the information to sign up. That sheet's back there as well as we continue to move ahead with these different things. And then we also want to remind you of the memorial service for our grandson Arthur. That'll be this Saturday at 2 there in the auditorium. If you're wanting to come out for that, you're invited. So that is Saturday at 2. So those are the things that I needed to remind you of the upcoming events and activities. We do have our prayer sheet. That's printed out if you need a copy that way, or if you don't, that should have came to you today in your email. So also a few updates there. We want to make sure we continue to pray for all those that we have within our church that need our prayers. All right, Ecclesiastes chapter 10. We're going to finish up Ecclesiastes chapter 10 tonight, and we were talking about how just a little folly can be dangerous. You know, just in the small things, just a small bad decision can affect us the rest of our life. And so we have to be smart about the little decisions as well as the big decisions that we make in our life, because they can come back and damage us. The same thing in regards to those that are in positions of leadership. You have to be smart about your decisions in that area as well, because a little folly in those areas can be very dangerous, not only to yourself, but it can affect a lot of other people as well. And so we talked about those things last week, And this week we're going to pick up again. We just mentioned it as we were wrapping up last week, but I think one of the most important things we have to be careful of is with our mouth, our words. And the Bible has a lot to say about that, not just here in Ecclesiastes and in the book of Proverbs, but we see some warnings also in the New Testament, specifically in the book of James. And we're going to be looking at some of these verses tonight that's reminding us the importance of our words, because I think nowhere is there more evidence of foolishness being apparent is when people open their mouths. And there's many times that we can appear that way too, because we may say some things that we shouldn't have said, right? There's those times that we say some words and we wish we could just reach back out there and grab them and bring them back, because, oh man, I wish I wouldn't have said that. Or I didn't really mean to say that. Because we get caught up in the moment. We are not watching our words as maybe someone says something to us. Boy, we just blurt something right out, or because of the situation is tense or whatever, and we just blurt things out. And then afterwards we're like, oh man, that was not good. Those words were not good, and they do damage. So we have to be careful with our words. All of us has said things that are not very wise, and that have hurt other people. So the first thing that I want to look at is those destructive words that we can say from time to time. There in verse number 11 of Ecclesiastes 10, it says, "A serpent may bite when it's not charmed. The babbler is no different." Okay? So the illustration here is of a serpent, or maybe a cobra. You've probably seen the shows or the movies that have the charmer that works with that cobra, and it has him dancing up and doing all things. But you know what? If you're not careful, that thing can bite you real easily, can it? Before that thing can be even charmed, it can bite you. And there's times before we can even control the words of our mouth, boom, they're out. They bite us. Or they bite someone else, and they do harm. That untamed tongue. And Solomon uses this example of a snake and how quick it can strike. And I saw that even as a boy growing up in Texas with snakes. That rattlesnakes were very common there where I grew up. If you went out in the backyard, you better be on the lookout, because those rattlesnakes were around the rocks, around the weeds and everything else. So you had to be careful and be alert, because man, they'd raise that little head up, and boy, they're on you before you even know it, because they're ready to strike. And sometimes we're so caught up in maybe a situation that if we're not careful, those words just fly out, and we're like, oh man, I should have never said that. And sometimes when just when we think we have our tongue mastered, right? Be careful, because boom, here it comes again, right? Those words just right out, and boom, just like that snake in its bite. He goes on in verse 12, he says, "The words of a wise man's mouth are gracious." Okay, being wise, having control of what you're going to say, says that person's mouth is gracious, but he says, the lips of a fool shall swallow him up. Now, what an illustration we have here in verse 12 of how that person that speaks foolishly, their words are just going to swallow them up and end up destroying them, because they don't have control of their words. And we see this in all different areas of life, don't we? Whether it's on the job, whether it's in your home, just the damage that can be done in a marriage relationship, right, guys? With your spouse, we have to be very careful. because we do a lot of damage. Hey, with our children, we've got to be careful because we can do a lot of damage just with a few words. And I know there's been times through the years as our kids were younger that I had to go back and ask for forgiveness from my kids because I maybe said some things that were very hurtful to them. And, it's damaging, and as the verse said, it can swallow you up, and it can also swallow up the person that you're saying the words to. I've seen it many times in the area of athletics where a coach can just do major damage to one of the players. And you guys may have been in that position where a coach just gives you the what for and makes you feel like you're just nothing. Or maybe it's a teacher that has done that. So all these areas we have to be careful with our words because we can do a lot of damage to those that are the hearer. And we can also hurt ourselves in the same instance. So the unkind tongue, is there anything more destructive than the tongue? I don't think there is there? That tongue can do so much damage. Throw out that old saying, right? Sticks and stones may break my bones, but words never hurt me. That's not true. That's not true at all, is it? Sometimes you wish that somebody just, won't you just go hit me? And don't say those words because, I'll heal up from that punch that you put on me wherever, hey, I'll heal up from that, but those words get carried on till today, right? Because I even saw some of you as I was talking about those unkind words that a parent can say or a coach or a teacher can say. And some of us are still carrying some of those scars from that, aren't we? Because of something that was said to us when we were younger. So, very powerful. Proverbs 10, let me mention some verses here in Proverbs that deal with that destructive tongue. He says, the lips of the righteous know what is acceptable, but the mouth of the wicked what is perverse. So the person that's righteous, the person that has control of their tongue is going to be thinking about things before they say it. But that person that just lets the mouth go is going to be very destructive. Proverbs 13 verse 3. He says, he who guards his mouth preserves his life, but he who opens wide his lips shall have destruction. And that's so true, isn't it? So we're being admonished here in Proverbs, again by Solomon, that, hey, guard your words. Hey, guard your lips. Sometimes it may be best not to even say anything, right? Just keep your mouth shut. Because sometimes if we'll just keep our mouth shut, we may be able to get through a certain situation without hurting ourselves or hurting somebody else. But we open our mouth, then, oh boy, here we go. The verse is talking about how the foolish person blurts out whatever's on their mind. And they don't stop to consider whom they might hurt in the end. They're not thinking about that. They're just concerned about what they need to say, right? I'm going to say this. I don't care what anybody thinks. And guess who they end up hurting the most? They're going to hurt themselves. It says the lips of a fool shall basically swallow him up, consume themselves. Proverbs 3, verse 5 to 6, he says, even so the tongue, he says it's a little member, and it boasts great things. See how great a forest a little fire kindles. And the tongue, he says, is a fire, a world of iniquity. The tongue is so set among our members that it defiles, he says, the whole body, and sets on fire the course of nature, and it is set on fire by hell. Those are some pretty strong words from James, aren't they? He says, man, your tongue may be a little member, but man, it can do great damage. It boasts great things. And then he gives the illustration of how the tongue can be like a fire. And you know what? Just a little fire out of control can do major damage, as we see every year. A lot of times in California, we saw some great damage that has taken place over in Hawaii because of fire that has got out of control, and it just does major destruction, doesn't it? And before they know it, they can't stop it. Just that little fire, little spark. Well, our words can do the same thing. James said there in verse number 6 of chapter 3, it says, the tongue is a fire, he says, a world of iniquity. And he says that it can defile the whole body. Not just the tongue area, your mouth, but it can mess the whole body up. Then in Proverbs 21, verse 23 says, whoever guards his mouth and tongue keeps his soul from trouble. So what do you think Solomon is saying there in that verse? Anybody? Whoever guards his mouth and tongue keeps his soul from trouble. Anybody a thought on that?
Say something that you would regret, that might cost you friendships, hurting family members that you can't bring back.
Okay, so through some of the words that we say, it can cause that person maybe never to receive Christ, right? We can alienate them from maybe ever having the opportunity to come to know Christ because we hurt them so bad.
That's going to destroy you.
Yeah, because you've lost that opportunity to minister because they don't want to hear anything from you because of the damage you've already done. I heard somebody else.
Yeah, that.
Bill, was it you? What's that?
It was me.
Okay, Sean.
Yeah, it's just, you know, I done lost it now. It's just that he's making sure he's speaking the right. You know, just like Mom and Dad always said, if you ain't gonna say nothing at all, don't say nothing.
Yeah, if you can't say something nice.
Right.
Yeah, if you can't say something nice, don't say anything at all.
I
I remember my mom telling me that.
That's your testimony,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, your word is who you are, isn't it?
Right, yeah.
But he says that the words of our, that if we can't guard our mouth and tongue, it can cause trouble with a person's soul. That's pretty scary, isn't it, when you think about
that? You're
that?
held accountable for that.
Because not only could it damage them emotionally, mentally, but we can damage them spiritually. That's dangerous when you think about what he's saying here. Hey, you need to guard your words. Be careful what you're saying because it can affect others even in the spiritual sense.
Especially when somebody looks up to you, for
Yeah.
the way you live.
Yeah.
And then you turn around and do something that's like, whoa, then they don't feel the same way about you.
Well, I think another thing that can tie into that, we can say a lot of things with our words about Christ and that we love Him, but what are our actions showing? Because the actions need to back up our words too. Not just being a big talker, right? There's a lot of people out there that are big talkers. But are you following that up with your actions in your life? So, important of guarding our mouth and our tongue is going to help keep our soul from trouble. That could even mean how God's going to look at us and how He's going to hold us responsible, isn't it? He's going to hold us responsible for our words. So, being uncontrolled things. Then the next area of our words he talks about is unreasonable words. Okay, in verse 13, he says, the words of his mouth begin with foolishness, and the end of his talk is raving madness. Anybody have any idea what he's saying here? Let me read it again. The words of his mouth begin with foolishness, and it says, and the end of his talk is raving madness. I believe what he's saying is that unwise tongue, people say things that don't make no sense. Right? They say words, but the words don't make no sense. You know, I've heard people like that, right?
You don't want an example, do you?
Well, yeah, we won't name any names, but he just happens to be the. He just may be the one that's leading our country right now. But it's so true, isn't it? You look at some of these politicians, and we could lump quite a few into that category, couldn't we?
Yes.
They say a lot of words, but their words don't make a lick of sense, and you're going.
And the more they talk, the worse they get.
You're scratching your head going, what is he saying? Or what is she saying? It doesn't make any sense. That's what he's talking about here. Then he goes on to say, the longer they talk, the crazier it becomes. You know, they start out and it's like, man, these people are not making any sense. But then they keep talking, and it's just like, man, they're getting crazier as they go.
That sounded like his speech the other day.
Oh. And then you have people that just talk for the sake of talking.
Of hearing themselves.
Because they want to hear themselves, right? You know, it's just better off, you might just want to be quiet, right? Don't say anything. Just be quiet, because when you open your mouth, you're going to make yourself look bad.
But there's some people who just can't help it.
But there are.
Some people, they can help if they just don't, bless their hearts,
They
they
just-
just lost control.
Yeah, they have.
One time Kevin and I were at a couples retreat in Springfield when we first were married. And this one lady, they were asking questions, and she made a comment. You could tell it immediately embarrassed her husband. And you would have thought he just looked at her like, what did you just, and she just kept on going. And by the time she was done, everyone was embarrassed for her and for her husband, because she did not know when to shut up and be quiet. She should have never said anything.
No, that wasn't the place or the
But
time
it was like she was
to
taking
deal
a
with
pot
what
shot
she was
at
saying.
it.
Yeah, it was
Oh
just.
my goodness, it was a disaster.
Yeah.
It was a disaster.
But exactly what he's talking about here. You know, it begins with foolishness, and then it ends with that raving madness. It's just like they're not making any sense.
Well, Pastor, you know, I think it's even got further than just like politicians. It's gotten where people, even with some aspect of authority, like even some teachers that's got authority over children, have gotten to where they have started taking their own authority and leading down a bad lane, and just leading kids and children down the wrong path, and just starting and just going on and on and on and on.
Well, and we've seen it over this last number of years, quite a few numbers of years. We see where, when it comes to the educational system, our government, in so many areas, things have, right is not right anymore.
Exactly.
It's come to the place where now wrong is right and right is wrong. And because of the foolishness that we see, you know, and with all of the craziness that's happening in our country, it's just continuing to get worse because of this type of thing.
I don't know if anybody else saw it last night, but over in, I think they said Europe, they've got to where the protesters are now barking loudly.
Yeah.
They've gotten so mad.
Wow.
Barking.
Did y'all hear that there's,
Like
I
dogs,
guess,
they're actually barking.
I guess some of the
They showed it
protesters,
video.
where's it at?
It's over in Europe somewhere.
In Europe somewhere that they're barking now,
Barking it.
trying to get across their agenda, I guess.
They
or
don't,
something.
they don't want the pro-lifers or anybody else to say anything that they don't agree with, so they start barking to shut them down.
Now that is raving madness
Yes,
there.
Absolutely.
That's raving madness.
Throw 'em a bone.
That's what they, that's good, that's good. Throw 'em up.
Throw it back at you though.
You know, it's better to keep quiet than open your mouth up and show that you are foolish, right? Now Paul calls these type of people unruly and vain talkers. In Titus chapter 1, verse 10, he says, "For there are many insubordinate, both idle talkers and deceivers, especially those of the circumcision." So guess what? It was happening back in Paul's day too.
Right.
Back with Solomon. Well, hey, let's just go all the way back to the start, right? People have caused their self-harm by opening their mouth, doing destruction. So that unreasonable words that don't make any sense. And then he moves on in verse 14. He talks about uncontrolled words. Verse 14, he says, "A fool also multiplies words." They just keep talking. No man knows what it is to be. Who can tell him what it will be after him? You know, they say stuff, but it doesn't make any sense at all.
It's like a fishtail. It's bigger and bigger.
Yeah.
Story.
So it's just an undisciplined tongue. That foolish person is full of words, but they don't even realize what they're saying. They don't. They're just, there they go.
They got attention.
And they don't realize what they're even saying. Proverbs 10 verse 19, he says, "In the multitude of words, sin is not lacking. But he who restrains his lips is wise." So Solomon says, hey, that person that just keeps blabbering on and on, you know, somewhere along the line, sin is amongst all that stuff, isn't it? And I tell you what, people who think that they have to cuss, right? It's just like they have no vocabulary.
That's it.
You know, can you not group some words together to express yourself without blankety blanking this and blankety blanking that? It just shows that person is foolish, right? They're foolish, you know, because they can't express themselves in a way that can take care of things instead of creating more problems. So that undisciplined tongue, the person who can't control their tongue, it says that they're able to discipline their whole body. You know, if you can have some discipline in what you say, you're going to be able to have discipline in other areas, aren't you? In fact, James said it this, coming back to James 3, verse 1 and 2. He says, "My brethren, let not many of you become teachers, knowing that we shall receive a stricter judgment." Okay, the more people you're responsible for, the more accountability you have.
More
Okay?
expected of you.
So he says you're going to receive stricter judgment. Verse 2, "For we all stumble in many things. If anyone does not stumble in word," it says he's a perfect man or a mature man. And it says, "able also to bridle the whole body." So if you can keep your tongue in check, guess what? You're going to be able to keep the other areas in your life in check.
We're in trouble. Yeah.
But when you think about it, that's really, when we let the flesh have control, we're all going to be in trouble, aren't we?
Absolutely.
Whether it's through our words, through our actions, or even our thoughts. The things that we begin to think on when we allow the flesh to have control. We allow those things to dominate us, and it's going to get us in trouble real quick. That's why he talks about the importance of dying to our flesh and letting the Spirit of God have control. And that's where the fruit of the Spirit begins to come into play, as we allow the Spirit to have control in our life. So he goes on, though, in verse 14 and 15, and he talks about those boastful words, those people that want to tell you how great they are, right? Verse 14, it says, "A fool also multiplies words. No man knows what is to be. Who can tell him what will be after him?" It says, "The labor of fools wearies them, for they do not even know how to go to the city." Okay. So here now we have the ones that want to boast about what they're going to be in the future. They want to let you know of all these great things that they're going to accomplish. Again, we see this in all realms of life, don't we? No more, I think it's exemplified in politics again. And they want to tell you how great they're going to be, right? And they're going to tell you all the things they're going to do.
Brave new world.
But they never follow through with those words, do they? They just want to get your vote from you where they can get into that position, and then they go do whatever they want to do. But you know what? I see it in athletics as well. You hear all these guys boasting about how great they are, right? But you know what? Only one injury. They're all only one injury away from not even being thought about again. They get hurt and nobody talks about them anymore because somebody else has took their spot, right? So Solomon said, be careful about boasting all the time about what's going to happen. Back in Proverbs 27, verse 1, he says, "Do not boast about tomorrow, for you do not know what a day may bring." We don't know what's going to happen. So we better be careful what we're saying is going to take place tomorrow. And he says that foolish person's going to boast about their future plans, and they eventually weary people with their talk, don't they, man? I'm tired of hearing you talk, right? Quit telling me what you're going to do or what you're going to be. And Solomon here in Ecclesiastes, there in these verses, he says they boast about all the things they're going to do tomorrow, but they can't even find their way home. That's what he says. They can't even find their way to the city, even though it's marked out really well for them. All the signs are pointing them home. But they're so foolish with the words they're saying that they can't even figure out how to get from point A to point B.
Boy, does that talk about our president.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, that one example is kind of covering our little study tonight, isn't it? But we see how these things can ruin people, can't it? It does some major destruction. Words are very powerful.
It doesn't just ruin them. I mean, look at how devastating
Yeah.
the country is right now.
Yeah, it devastates so many people, especially when a person's in a position of leadership. We as Americans ought to be embarrassed. I know I am. I'm embarrassed that that's the one that's leading our country.
I believe it's voted in.
Right? Don't you think the world is just having a heyday with it?
It's a joke.
no doubt.
It's a mockery. And that's sad, coming from a country that has been held in high esteem for so long. You know, but that's
sin.
But that's where sin comes into play. Because guess what? God.
Shows you how far just a little bit of foolishness goes.
Exactly. And the thing is that God is going to give each respective country exactly what they deserve in leadership. We see it throughout the Old Testament, don't we? He gave Israel what they deserve for not listening to Him, for going out and living and following after all the other gods.
They're still paying for it.
And they are still paying for it today. But you know, you read down through, you know, with Daniel and Isaiah and Ezekiel and all those prophets that basically were sharing God's word, but it was falling on deaf ears, wasn't it? Everybody was they were rejecting it. So guess what? They got to pay the price for it. And I think because America has kicked God out of everything, guess what? God says, okay, here's who you get right now, America. It doesn't mean that we can't try to do our best to try to help things be better, right? We need to pray for our leaders.
They need it.
You know, we need to get out and let our voice be heard as the time comes to vote again.
Absolutely.
We've got to do our part to try to help things to get better. But as we wrap up the chapter here, he talks about unfaithful words. Unfaithful words. And we see that with these last verses here in chapter 10. I'm going to read these verses and then I'm going to take some time to talk about what Solomon's saying. Verse 16, he says, "Woe to you, O land, when your king is a child, and your princes feast in the morning. Blessed are you, O land, when your king is the sons of nobles, and your princes feast at the proper time, for strength and not for drunkenness. Because of laziness, the building decays, and through idleness, the house leak. A feast is made for laughter, and wine makes merry, but money answers everything. Do not curse the king, even in your thoughts. Do not curse the rich, even in your bedroom. For a bird of the air may carry your voice, and a bird in flight may tell the matter." There's a lot wrapped up in those verses right there. Okay?
They talk about those drones.
But I think what he's trying to get across, you better be careful what you say behind closed doors.
Because they're always listening.
Absolutely, right through your television.
Walk this here.
Be careful what you say in closed doors, because you don't, or the things you say in private, because you don't know what they may go and say that you said in private. I think that's what he's trying to get across here. I think we've all heard the little adage, little birdie told me. There's always a little birdie in there that wants to go and tell all of the things that maybe you shouldn't have said about someone else, right? It's like, how'd that get out? Well, it was a little birdie. It was probably someone that you thought you could trust with what you said.
The way technology is today, though, I mean,
Exactly.
with your phones are on all the time.
They are.
I mean, all you have to do is say, "Hey Siri," and they answer you. So they're listening.
They're definitely listening. Hey, your TVs, these new TVs are listening.
Smart TVs.
You know, they hear. You wonder why you get ads about what you were just talking about? Well, they hear you. They know what you're saying. They know what to send you. In fact, mine just popped up on me here. But the thing is we do have to be careful. Because things that you say that you think are going to be private can go public very, very easily. magnifying and creating even more damage, right? So Solomon gives us a fair warning. He says it's going to happen. So you better think about what you're saying. You better not be unfaithful with your words. You know, because there's always going to be somebody that you thought, right, wouldn't say anything, but they're going to go say. So we got to be careful with our words, no matter who we're talking to, no matter where we're talking, right? We want to make sure that we're saying things that are going to build people up and minister grace to the hearers, not tear people down and hurt them. So, our words, we've got to be careful about little things. That's the point that Solomon's trying to get across. Little compromises can do devastation in the end, can it? We have to be careful about people that are in leadership. Those that may get appointed, but they're not qualified. We talked about that last week, didn't we? Appointing people that are not even fit for that position they're going to be in. We got to be careful with the things that we're doing every day. We talked about last week of got to be watching out for those things that can hurt us, right? Don't be foolish when you're working. Use the illustration of the person chopping the wood, right? Be careful that wood could kick up and hit you. Or you might miss the wood and hit yourself with the axe. You know, be careful when you're building the wall, because as you're tearing that stuff out, there might be a snake there to bite you. Or in my case, like I said last week, I got stung by the wasp because I wasn't paying attention to the area that I was trying to get rid of the rotted wood, and I had a swarm of wasp around my head biting me. We've got to be careful. We've got to be on the alert. We've got to be careful with our words, because they can be very explosive. But when we really boil it down, is it really the tongue that's explosive? You got it, Diane. For those who are in the back, maybe didn't hear, it's not the tongue, it's the heart.
Yeah.
Because out of the heart,
Yes.
the mouth speaks. So we have to be careful what's right here. And that's why we're told in Proverbs 4 verse 23 says, keep your heart with all diligence, for out of it springs the issues of life. So we have to be watchful. But what are we putting in? If we're putting in negativity all the time, ugliness all the time,
That's what you're gonna spit out.
it's exactly what we're going to spit out, right, Sean? Because that's why you got to even be careful about how much news you watch too, right?
That's terrible.
Be careful. You know, be careful who you're hanging around with. That's why God's Word is so important. We've got to be pouring it in our life. We need to be reading it, studying it, meditating on it, even memorizing it. Because that's what Jesus used to overcome the temptations of the devil, wasn't it? Hey, won't you turn those stones to bread? Man, you're hungry. You know, I've been bombarding you for quite a while now here. Just speak the words. You can turn them stones into some bread. Jesus was like, no, it's written. It's written. You know, he took him up on the top of the temple. Said, won't you just jump off here and show your God? What did he say? Hey, it's written. Took him up on the mountain and said, hey, if you'll bow down and worship me, I'll give you all of this. Hey, it's written. It's written.
It already is.
Yeah.
Get on out of here. Leave me alone. We've got to keep our heart, he says, with all diligence. That means we got to make the effort, don't we? Hey, we got to be disciplined. Okay? You know, if we can control the tongue, it says that we're going to be able to control the body. It comes back to discipline, doesn't it? It comes back to being willing to do the work. And the guys, those that have been coming on our Saturday morning meetings, we talked about how we change habits or how we start new habits. It's not by just trying. Well, I'll just try. No, it's about training. We have to put forth the effort every day if we want to be successful when we're confronted with the problems. Just like an athlete has to train every day in order to be able to compete on whatever field or court or track or whatever they're doing. They have to train, don't they? They just don't get out there on the track or the field and, well, I'll just try to do my best. No, it doesn't work that way, does it? You know, you just can't wing it. No, you've got to train. That's discipline. That's putting in the efforts every day to be prepared when we're faced with the opposition. And here's the second thing that is so wonderful that God tells us. James 1:5. Some of you probably can quote this. If any of you lacks wisdom, let him ask of God. And listen to this. Who gives to all liberally and without reproach, and it'll be given him. So if we're struggling, what do? Hey, God, I need a little help here. Asking for some wisdom. Asking for help. And guess what? God will give it to you. So there's our answer. Hey, when you get up in the morning, before you start your day, hey, God, I'm asking for some wisdom today. Hey, maybe before you get out of the vehicle and go into work, hey, God, I need a little wisdom today to do my job. To deal with these people I got to deal with, right? You know, you got a difficult person to confront. Hey, God, I need a little wisdom as I talk to this person. Or God, before I get in my car to start driving on that road out there with all those crazy people, I need some wisdom, right? We got to ask. Because I think God, sometimes he's just up there going, want my help? Hey, you want my help? Just ask, right? Kind of sometimes like when our kids get older and, you know, we're here to help, but maybe they don't want our help, right?
They know everything.
They think they got it all under control, and so they go on out and they do things, and we're going, yeah, you'd have just asked, I would have helped, right? If you would just ask, son or daughter, I'll help you. But no, they got to go and think they can do it themselves, and that's how we are as believers, aren't we? I got it, don't worry, I got this guy. And God's going, okay, let me know how that works out for you. And guess what? It don't work out very good a lot of times, does it? Because we're trying to do it in our own strength. And God says, hey, just ask. So if we'll ask him for the skill to navigate the path of life so we don't do anything foolish and hurt ourselves and then hurt other people too. Let's just ask God. Hey, Lord, give me wisdom. Hey, Lord, give me skill to walk the path today. Hey, God, help me not to do anything foolish. Right? I can't be wise without you, God. Because he's wisdom. His word's wisdom. Jesus is wisdom. The Holy Spirit is wisdom. And he says if we'll just ask, he'll be there to come alongside us and direct our path. What's he say? Thy word is a lamp unto my feet and a light unto my path. That one's good too, though, Diane. Hiding God's word in our heart. Thy word have I hidden in my heart that I might not sin against him. So that's a good one too. But hey, he's a lamp. In fact, trying to remember here now. In 2 Samuel 22:29, he says, you are my lamp, O Lord. The Lord will enlighten my darkness. I was like, when I read through that, it's been about a month ago now, as I was doing my devotional time reading through Samuel, 1st and 2nd Samuel. God just hit me with that verse, and I was like, okay, I'm going to memorize, because I try to memorize verses, as much as I can. I don't do it as good as I used to. A little bit harder now, the older I get, to memorize verses. Y'all testify with me on that one.
Amen.
A little bit harder as you get older to memorize God's word. It's a little bit harder for me, but guess what? It doesn't mean I'm going to stop. I'm going to keep doing it. It may just take me a little bit longer to do it. But that was one of the verses that I've just memorized. It's powerful. You're my lamp, O Lord. You enlighten my darkness. Hey, God, lighten up my path for me today. Hey, God, give me wisdom as I navigate the darkness that I'm in this crazy world that we live in, right? Or the things that come into our life. And I know this last month or so with what we've been going through with Solomon and Rachel and little Arthur. And God, I need you to enlighten my path. I need you to enlighten the darkness that we're going through right now. I need your wisdom. I need your help, right? We all do. But you know what? We have not because we ask not. If you lack wisdom, ask. Simple, but man, how many times we don't do that? We just try to go and charge hell with the squirt gun, right? We're going to do it our way. And God's like saying, God just looks back and says, okay, go ahead, try that, see how it works. No, ask of God. He says he'll give liberally and upbraideth not. That's a wonderful promise, isn't it? So, we don't have to be foolish. God says, I'll give you wisdom to help you as you navigate your life. So we'll pick up with chapter 11 next week. We have the financial report for August. So Phil, if you want to pass those out, you can. And just want to mention a few things because next month we do have our annual business meeting. And